Hello, I'm Kevin Fincher with the Austin Regional Manufacturers Association, and welcome to another episode of the Manufacturing Austin podcast. We're excited to have you here today. Before we get started, I'd like to thank our longtime sponsor, Texas Mutual, for supporting our Thought Series. Thank you again for Texas Mutual for being supporters of the manufacturing industry and the workers' comp. I'd also like to thank our producers, Mylan Media, who are behind the cameras today, as always, shooting the video for us. So we like to talk about all things interesting and weird going on in Central Texas manufacturing, highlighting some of our members. And today we're going to go a little bit different direction and talk about workforce development and education. And so we've got an expert here with us today that will delve into quite an interesting background and where she's ended up. And so we'll introduce her in a moment. But what's important to understand, everywhere that I go when I talk to our members, it's always about workforce development and what we're going to need in order to reshore manufacturing. Today, we're going to really speak specifically to the semiconductor industry and what's happening in that area. And so, again, our guest today is Alyssa Reinhart with the Texas Institute of Electronics. Alyssa has been a longtime supporter and a partner with ARMA and many of our other members that we'll go into today. So, Alyssa, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Happy to be here.
So why don't you take a minute to introduce yourself?
Okay. So as you mentioned, I am with the Texas Institute for Electronics, otherwise known as TIE. I am the Director for Workforce Development, and I started, I think, in September 2023. It's been a very interesting journey so far, but
a lot of things have happened since 23.
Yes. So the Texas Institute for Electronics is out of UT Austin. We are a semiconductor consortium connecting academic institutions, industry members, and government, local, state, national government, and industry national labs. Our focus is within the semiconductor industry for research and development is on advanced packaging, particularly 3D heterogeneous integration. And I know we can talk about that a little bit more later. But from the workforce development perspective, we're kind of all encompassing for semiconductor pathways and roles, because that's really what our industry needs, especially all of our partners there, and thinking about even if we're trying to recruit for one specific position or one area of just getting more people in the pipeline, you need sort of a broader scope there.
All right. Well, we'll talk certainly a little bit more about that. We'll talk about advanced packaging and some other things in the semiconductor space. But let's talk a little bit about your background, because you've been in education for a long time, and you've kind of been all over this country in different roles. I think it's safe to say that you are a data person. You like data. So why don't you go back and kind of talk about your path that you've had that led you to where you are today with TIE?
Well, so it kind of, when I was thinking about this question before we met, I think back to, so our family business growing up was a nondestructive testing company. So a small business based in Austin, owned for over 30 years, that my dad started. So when you think about another industry that people don't know what it is, so non-destructive testing is like when you go to the doctor and people want to look inside you for diagnostic purposes. So you'll do X-ray or ultrasound. So nothing where the doctor cuts in. Non-destructive testing, or NDT, is similar, but for metals and composites. But they also use X-ray, ultrasound, but other different techniques like mag particle testing, eddy current, ground penetrating radar, things like that. So it's an industry that has its technician and engineer focused, but there are national standards which have become the international standards set by the American Society for Non-Destructive Testing. So you have level 1, level 2, level 3 in these different types of inspection techniques that engineers and technicians both have to gain. So my dad was, a professional engineer, but was also a level 3 in all of the inspection techniques. And so I grew up in that environment, from, bookkeeping to, answering phones to, I was on the job site, the Austonian, helping support ground penetrating radar back in the day. So, that was something that, that was our family business. And, similar to the semiconductor industry, back in the 90s, we were seeing sort of aging workforce, a lack of interest and awareness of this. there wasn't, the engineering had more of a direct path, but for technicians, it was kind of brought you in and specially trained you and got you into the field. But it was high paying. It was, really good thing. But it was, again, like this marketing and awareness piece that was really lacking. So my dad and I actually started a nonprofit company back in 2008 with the goal of tapping into the Skills Development Fund, but to try to get sort of short course trainings that graduating high school seniors could take to get into the industry, as well as we were providing hands-on training for engineering. So I was up at South Dakota State University leading, engineering training on these technical methods. This was at a time, though, where I think there was less of a focus really on, it was, everyone needs a 4-year degree. So we were not getting a lot of buy-in from different stakeholders that loved the idea, loved the career path, but it's it has to be a bachelor's degree program. We can't, or it has to be at least linked to an associate. So the idea of sort of short-term training that could, stack, that was not a thing at the time. And I didn't really have the education background, to kind of be able to navigate that as well. So my undergraduate was actually a statistics probability. So that's why I'm a data person.
Good for you.
I know. Well, I started mechanical engineering and I kind of got wooed to the math department.
Right.
But I love applied things. That's what drew me to engineering, but really drew me to statistics. But so I ended up working various fields in education overseas, but then came back and, this experience with the nonprofit, I went into graduate school at UT again. And, during that time, I started getting a research assistantship at the Higher Education Coordinating Board. So I was there was a sort of a policy think tank within the coordinating board. Was the Higher Ed Policy Institute, HEPI. Doesn't exist anymore, but it was supposed to be kind of an independent unit that would do sort of, policy analysis and recommendations. So again, kind of all over the board, but with higher ed focus. And I ended up getting a job after I finished my graduate school. I got a full-time job at the coordinating board, kind of between research and strategic development or strategic planning. But I had applied for a fellowship through a group out of Harvard. It's the Center for Ed Policy Research, and they have a fellowship that's called the Strategic Data Project. And the idea is to take people with advanced degrees with sort of data and statistics knowledge and expertise to bring them into educational agencies, particularly like K-12, because when No Child Left Behind came, all of a sudden districts were really, they were asked to do high-level analysis and, reporting and things like that, which is not typically in sort of your curriculum and instruction pathways and for your teachers that come up. So this was an idea to bring people with, graduate statistics, MBAs into districts to help them better, drive, what they do around information and to generate and create their own research. So that was a part, and that's actually got me into K-12. So that I was matched with the Syracuse City School District, and I went up there. So I was in upstate New York for a few years, kind of doing like data warehousing, dashboard building, data culture, all sorts of things. But it was always that sort of application. Like, I'm not just making a pretty dashboard. Like, how are we actually going to use this and improving instruction? How do I make a teacher's life more less complicated when they've got 20 different logins for all of these different formative assessment and ed tech tool platforms. Yep. And so how do I bring that into like one place where they can actually make sense of it, especially not being sort of a data or statistics person. So that was kind of the role there. And I've got lots of friends still in the district. I love upstate New York. My husband's job brought us back to Texas. And so one of my friends through the fellowship was at the Ohio Department of Ed and was in career and technical education and sort of data, moving the state forward, I think, in how it looked at data around this sort of pathway, career pathways. And so she's like, oh, the Texas Education Agency is about to do some really great stuff. So if you're going to Austin, you need to work with this person. You need to get down there. And so I applied and I was accepted. And I started with the College of Career Military Prep. division at TEA, which is, it's still like, I've never really been early learning. I've never been, I've kind of been on the pathway side, so college and career, kind of both sides. But this was right when Perkins 5 had kind of come out. So we were, it was where the state was kind of overseeing sort of the reboot and adjustment around that new legislation, which aligned sort of,
So what is Perkins 5?
Oh, sorry. So that's basically the legislation that sort of authorizes and funds career and technical education programs. And so there were a lot of great advances with Perkins 5 that I think it better married it with the ESSA and your typical reporting requirements. And so it was, rather than having kind of two separate, is that I think it was a really good push towards that college and career, because, I think we always used to say that all education is career education. It just, you're always preparing for a role. That could be like, my sister who is a professor, her career has not left academics, but that is her career path. Where other, whether other education options, it just depends on your career path. But this idea of still having multiple entry-exit points and thinking that nothing is terminal, that you always need to think about how you're preparing a student to get back on. And so how you're building pathways around that. So I think with Perkins 5 and what the state did, and as well as that was sort of overhauling a bit around industry-based certifications. So actually, going to industry, I'm like, would you hire someone, if two candidates were equal, if this person had this, this training or this certificate, would you hire them over the other? Like, is it meaningful enough for that versus, like OSHA 10 is a great, valuable certification. It's not always something that gets someone to a higher paid job. So it was trying to kind of push a little bit more on what, how we were thinking about career and technical education. And I think it brought a lot more focus and funding back to it, which was exciting.
And what was the time frame on this?
So this was, I came back in 2018.
2018.
So
okay.
And my first 6 months, I think, on the job was touring. So Texas has 20 education, K-12, they have 20 educational regions. Each one has a service center. I think we toured 17 of the 20. And so it was, getting to meet people and see different CTE programs at all these different high schools, sort of about what people were struggling with, but also kind of get feedback on this statewide plan that we were developing.
Okay, so let's dive into this a little bit, right? So you talked a little bit earlier about, this push that we've had that you got to go get the 4-year college degree, right? And as we have talked about repeatedly over and over, the offshoring of manufacturing, and as those jobs left, high schools effectively started to take some of the CTE training programs out because the jobs weren't there, so why do we want to train students? And as we shift towards, the 4-year degree, and Texas comes along with the STAR to measure the schools, and I think that changed a lot of the way that Texas started to teach, which is we got to get people to take these tests, and they're all going to prepare and go off to college. We know for a fact that less than, I think, 50% will go on to that 4-year degree. It's probably much lower than that. You're the data person. You know the facts better than I do, but here we are now with this realization that we've offshored too much of our manufacturing. You need to bring that back. Those are great middle income jobs. And as we do that, we have to deal with the workforce issue, right? Which is we don't have that CTE training. So I think you're talking about the creation of that pathway. We talk about a lot, I think, in Texas, and lots of things are changing. That schools were penalized if they put kids through CTE because they didn't get the same kind of measurement on that as they would on AP, college prep, or things of that nature. Talk a little bit about the changing attitude around that and where we've gone now as a state. And dual credit has become a very popular thing. And where's the state of Texas now? And are we going in the right direction?
Well, I don't know if I can fully, comment on, where the state is going, but I think some important things happened, especially with Perkins 5. For one, I think. Again, that sort of separation before it was, college versus career. But, during that time, we're really starting to see more of this blending of college and career. That's, everyone, I think it was first Texas TX or 60 by 30 TX. So a lot of great things have been kind of moving the needle, and I think because it is at the end of the day, like I said before, all education is towards some type of career, and so we need to think about what sort of career that may be, what other sorts of things we need students to learn. But I think with the Perkins 5 and kind of the movement at the time, we started to kind of talk about, and this is some of our talking points from back in the day, where every student should be graduating, like the sort of the sweet spot is the intersection of academic, technical, and employability. And so, you're getting your academic, and like that's where you see a lot of the AP and other things like that. The technical side, that's where CTE comes in, especially like whether, and that can be that can be robotics, that could be welding, that could be a lot of great programs. And then the employability, this is the work-based learning. This is where students get to actually understand what it is on the job. They're they're also team-based learning, but actually getting internships or things like that, where they develop the punctuality, the reporting, the others, and various things that those now that I think people are talking about durable skills,
yeah.
But same sort of thing. So I think there's been more of a focus there, and you'll see with TA there's also the college career readiness outcomes bonus, and you have the CCRSM accountability metrics. So there is more, like there was starting to be within the state more attention to not just are they taking AP courses, but also what are the various ways that someone can show that they're ready for the next step, and giving schools credit for that. And so I think dual credit is one of those components there, but it's, so thinking of dual credit for kind of those broader pathways, so that for someone who wants to go towards an associate's degree right out or straight there, or getting that credit even if they're going straight into the industry, giving them an industry-based credential and some initial college credit that would allow them to come back more quickly if they wanted to upskill in the next step, as well as sort of the more I guess I'd say traditional, but the other path, is kind of straight to college. So I think I think Texas has done a good job with that. I know even in this legislative session, they're working to address things that have, whether it's accessibility and from a cost perspective, for example, tuition materials, things like that. I think we'll see, but teacher, I think there was a lot of discussion this session around teacher training from across the board. So recruiting and keeping really high quality teachers, both for your kind of core academic, but as well as your technical, which especially for some of the industries, it's a little hard to kind of pull industry members into the teaching field at the salary.
It's certainly one of the struggles because school districts have to compete with industry salaries and trying to put those folks back in. So we've talked about how are different ways to do that, right? We have so many baby boomers that are graduating, or not graduating, but retiring now. Yeah. And not all of them want to spend all their time on a golf course. I think a lot of them want to give back to the community. So we're really trying to push hard in bringing these retiring baby boomers back in part-time to help teach at the high school and the CTE level. So hopefully we'll get some more traction on that with programs such as that. But, you had mentioned, this, we talk about this all the time, that manufacturing today is not what manufacturing was 30 or 40 years ago, right? This perception gap and trying to get to, it's not just the students. We always talk about we've got a brand manufacturing with the students, but we also need to get to the influencers, which are going to be the parents and these CTE folks and the counselors in the high school. And so I'm excited. We have a program that we're doing with many of our partners. It's called the Teacher Summer Externship. So in the summertime, what we do is we invite teachers, counselors to come out, visit with our manufacturers. It's a paid week externship. They get to learn and see what's going on with advanced manufacturing, and then hopefully be able to take that back and have a new perception and take that to the students and say, as they identify that ability that you had talked about in that gap, maybe they're not the greatest test taker, as I like to say, but they really know how to use their mind and their hands, and they can think through problems. And when you have that applied approach to education rather than just learning, formulas and things of that nature, it really starts to click, right? And so those are those pathways that we really enjoy seeing. So I think we've come a long way. We've got a long way to go still, but we're making progress on that. And, it sounds like you've been at that for a long time in the path that you've had. So, let's kind of pivot a little bit now and move on, because you're in a different role today, right? You're the Director of Workforce Development at TIE, which we touched briefly on what TIE is, but it's really this incredible fusion, I think, of UT and ACC and industry all coming together to address this. So talk a little bit about the concept of TIE and how we got to where we are today with TIE and where we're going to go with TIE.
Yeah. So TIE was founded in 2021. We grew out of an NSF-funded engineering research center called the Nascent Center, which was, I think, around a $40 million 10-year program at UT focused on nanotechnology. Also had a lot of the same elements that TIE has. So, your academic partnerships, your industry partnerships, had a great workforce development program, which included, teacher research externships. So teachers would spend 6 weeks doing research projects with TIE faculty or with Nascent faculty. They would do a high school summer program, undergraduate research, and also a graduate certificate in nanotechnology and big data. So this was kind of, and it was even with lab kits that, could be sent home, especially during COVID area. So you could still get kind of that hands-on exposure. But so TIE was founded, like I said, it is about 2021. I think, being with those industry partnerships, I think, TIE leadership, particularly my boss, SV Srinivasan, we started to hear rumblings, I think, from industry about not only that something like the CHIPS Act may happen, but just that, there was the kind of identifying what the need was. And, we were seeing this large gap in advanced packaging. So I think, around, we've seen just kind of overall, there's, the offshoring has happened, but particularly with advanced packaging, only about 3% happens in the U.S., or at least, did a couple of years ago. So that's when the CHIPS Act happened. There was, like, you've seen various programs with NAPMP, with the NetCast centers, like there is a large focus on advanced packaging. So, TIE was kind of founded with industry support, like, yes, this is a good idea to kind of go forward. We got initial funding from the University of Texas very grateful to former President Jay Hartzell. Was very supportive, as well as this Texas legislature. So you had the U.S. CHIPS Act passed in 2022.
So we have this massive wake up call that really sparked during COVID, right? When you couldn't buy a car because people didn't realize, oh wow, there's microchips in cars and I can't buy. And we can talk about the history of where America used to lead in production and fabrication of chips, and I think the number is something like we got down to around 10% of the world's production, but most of the advanced chips were outside in Taiwan and Korea. And so it was a wake-up call that we need to start to bring that back, right? So we get the benefit of the Federal CHIPS Act. Texas follows suit, comes out with its own version of the chips to help support that. And now I feel like we got this supercharged environment, right? Yes. And it was the perfect place for TIE to be.
Yes.
And here we go. So, now.
Well, I think, the Texas legislature, through the Texas CHIPS Act, we were able to get another $440 million, which helped us start. This is back, 2023, we're starting to get our Montopolis and our pickle sites starting to, get them renovated, because there's a long timeline for construction and equipment ordering and things like that. So this gave us sort of a head start, I think, with a lot of compared to others. And so then, we were we were trying to position for federal funding, but this DARPA Next Generation Microelectronics Manufacturing, or NGMM program opportunity came up, which was very well suited, I think, for us. Where TIE kind of fits is you have, sort of your typical university fabs, which UT has had for a long time, and then you have, your Samsungs, your TSMCs, or the OSATs, like the large scale, when you're thinking kind of like low volume, high mix. There's a lot of variability that happens in a university fab site versus when you get to Samsung, it's automated, it's it's high volume, low mix.
Right.
So where TIE sits is we have an R&D site at Pickle. So it's sort of more starting to concentrate more. And then we have our prototyping facility at Montopolis, which is really trying to get, the idea is that it gets us over that sort of valley of death.
For our viewers and listeners, that's when you refer to Pickle and refer to Montopolis, right? This is UT campus, but it's just different facilities, right? Pickle has got all kinds of interesting stuff that's happening up there. Nuclear and who else knows what's behind the wall?
Supercomputer, academic supercomputer, and then our Montopolis campus is the former site of Semitech.
Correct.
So it's which, especially for someone that grew up in Austin, like I remember, that sort of era, and now kind of with TIE, it's almost feels like getting the band back together.
Yeah.
So the number of people that come are like, oh, I worked here back in the night. Yeah.
It's a fabulous thing, right? And this is, to me, that's what's really exciting, right? Is standing up this old fab and bringing it back to life. And then how it's going to be used, from a training perspective. We'll talk about that in a moment. But just wanted to make sure our viewers understood. We're talking about two different facilities that are part of the UT campus. So with that, right, we've talked a little bit about advanced packaging. And this is something, chips is great because it's bringing a lot of the wafer fabrication back to the U.S. Samsung, obviously, for us here in Central Texas, has been a massive benefit with the $45 billion investment that's happening up at Taylor and the two fab plants coming on. They were supposed to do some advanced packaging and decided, to pull back on that. We have TSMC that came into Arizona, and they're doing, some of the most advanced chip stuff there as well. But what I don't think most people or listeners realize is that you make these chips, but they have to basically still be shipped overseas. They're either going to go to Korea or they're going to go to Taiwan and go into this process, the advanced packaging. And so we're not engineers in that space, but I think maybe we can touch on that pretty highly, right? The chips in the space that we're working in now, you're trying to pack as many chips into as tight of a space as you can. And we've got 3D layering now that's happening and all that. Can you talk a little bit about where you guys are going and why that is so important? Because again, you mentioned we do 3% of advanced packaging, right? Yeah. That's a problem.
It is. So I think the industry has kind of been up until recently was really driven by kind of Moore's law. So Gordon Moore, co-founder of Intel, in the 60s, kind of noticed that every 2 years the number of transistors on a microchip kind of doubled.
Yep.
And so that is kind of driven. So we kept getting smaller and faster. At pretty much as he predicted, it continued. But we're now facing sort of physical limitations of that law. So you can't really get much smaller than like an atom.
Space,
So really, where this industry goes for the future is advanced packaging. So it's the idea of how you can kind of bring chips that do different things, so you have your processing memory together and pack them as tightly as possible. But where this is, it's where the sort of the wiring and how you combine them is as important as the chip itself. So we're looking at, and where TIE is coming in, that's advanced packaging and heterogeneous integration, so bringing different components that do different things into one unit. 3D is, of course, how can we make use of the vertical space? So, but there are additional, whether it's thermal or just kind of architecture, there are different problems that, to try to figure out with us. So we are focused, like I said, we're focused on 3D HI or 3D heterogeneous integration, but also around multi-materials. So exploring new materials for this. So this is why And but this is because of the physical limitations of Moore's law, where, for us to continue to get smaller, faster, cheaper, we have to, this is where advanced packaging is really the next frontier. And so that's why it's really exciting to be part of TIE in this effort, because we're kind of leading some of that.
And then
effort.
what is the future on that? Where are we trying to go? Because we ultimately want to stand up an ecosystem here that will do the advanced packaging, correct?
Yeah, so, our goal is to partner with, Samsung is one of our core partners, but, because it's not just the manufacturing, so you're thinking about the tools that go in, the processes. So it's the design of chips, the how you test, failure analysis of 3HI chips. Our packages are different. So it is beyond just sort of your large-scale manufacturing or fabs that we need to work with, and that is a part of our our NGMM program. We've got, I'd say, I'm trying to remember, 30 different industry partners, both in the region as well as across the country. But because Austin is such a powerhouse and has such a strong ecosystem here, it's been, I don't know if TIE would have happened as well in another place, but we can really tap into those industry partners, and that the workforce side goes along with it, because if there are advances, if there's a new tool, if there's a new process, if there's something else that's invented, having technical training and the training to go along with it will only speed that, so that adoption and that process as it goes into full scale production.
Yeah. So we talking about a lot of this PhD research stuff, right, and the engineering side of that. But again, that's kind of bring back to workforce and where TIE is going to play in that, because you're not doing this alone, right? This has been a partnership not only with UT, but with Austin Community College, right? And we were talking, prior to this session about it's not just an up, right? It's also a down, right? Taking those PhD engineering students and putting them down into the STARS program at ACC and getting some hands-on. Talk about this integration and how that is pulling together, because I think that's unique in what we're doing here versus other parts of the country.
So I think, we have the benefit in Austin of having this well-established ecosystem. We're Micron is just going into upstate New York. Intel's going into Ohio. We've had a long history here, and so
Samsung and NXP, which was Freescale, and Motorola, right? Going, as you said, back to the 80s with Semitech
and so from the university level, from community college level, we've been preparing talent for the industry for a long time. I think something that as we're really trying to pull manufacturing back and sort of some of the gaps or some of the areas that we really want to grow more in. So when I started at TIE, something that, especially working in higher ed, four-year institutions are wonderful places. They're also, especially something as big as University of Texas at Austin, it's a beast. So to pivot quickly and to stay sort of in step with industry is a little harder. It's especially sort of the undergraduate level, I think, even some at the graduate level. We're doing a strong job, I think, with graduate work on having industry-sponsored research projects and master's thesis and PhDs and things like that. But it was something we're hearing from, not just in Austin, but this is sort of across the country around, we're graduating engineering talent that is theoretically solid, can do all the math you put in front of them, they're great, have never picked up a wrench. And so especially when you're moving just straight out of the design and into more of the manufacturing side, these are a lot of the companies are having to do boot camps, really, for incoming talent to kind of get them before. And so you have this gap there of where a graduate could be productive. And so industry members are spending 6 months boot camping graduates to get those hands-on skills and some of the other components to really be ready to actually be productive and give back. So there's a little bit of kind of lost time and the financial investment that companies have to make, which is not a bad thing, but it just, one of my goals was to sort of offboard that onboarding to the education program. So I think we've been doing a great job with our graduate programs at UT, industry sponsored projects and things like that. We have a lot of the industry connections. But getting more of those hands-on opportunities specifically for the semiconductor manufacturing industry at the undergraduate level, I was really excited to work with Austin Community College. So Austin Community College, has been also a part of this ecosystem, and has really developed kind of a unique approach to customized training for companies. They've gotten to know all of these companies very well. They've been working with them for 10 years. So that's Samsung, Infineon, NXP, Tokyo Electron, Applied Materials. So, and then even when Tesla, came in, working with them, and it's this sort of the broader focus on advanced manufacturing. They've really kind of developed an art to it, and I credit Dean Marmolejo over at ACC for this, and her staff, her faculty are amazing.
Laura Marmolejo absolutely is a champion and has really changed, the way that advanced manufacturing and training is done. So that's the vision over there. Yeah, you're right.
And so, the way that they've designed programs from the continuous education side, so that currently are offered just to industry employees. So, Samsung sending talent current employees over to train with ACC. And they've developed it in a way where they can be packaged into rapid. Like there's their STARS program, which is a 4-week plus 2-day training. That's kind of it's really their capstone part of their kind of. It's almost like an apprenticeship light program where you start kind of entry level, with them for I think around 11 weeks, and AMP. You start your job. While you're on the job, you go through CAST and you upskill, and then STARS is sort of that capstone program that kind of gets you into the technician level.
AMP, you mentioned AMP. AMP is what we used to call the P-Tech program, right? And that's your entry level. That gets you in the door, but from there you continue to build, right? And STARS being, as you said, the capstone on that piece,
And so, but this, we have at UT, we have something, it's a May term, which is, so it's between when spring semester ends and when summer school starts. There's about 4 weeks and 2 days. That is almost perfect timing. So, so we are, part of our NGMM workforce development program, we are working with ACC to create 2 3DHI focused technician and undergraduate credentials. Those are some of our deliverables to DARPA. So we're, where do you start in terms of this? So right now we have 11 sophomores and a couple, I think 2 juniors and the rest are sophomores, 11 students at UT that are, they're chemistry, physics, chemical engineering, mechanical engineering, electrical and computer, good mix of them. They're over at ACC completing the STARS training. So they're getting some of those technical hands-on. We're bringing industry partners in, which is a part of the STARS group. It's Samsung, it's Tel, it's NXP are coming over at lunch to meet with the students and talk about the industry, talk about career opportunities, and we even had our program officer from DARPA, Mike Holmes, who is the biggest support for all of this. He's been fantastic for the workforce development side. He stayed an extra day. He changed his flight for kind of regular meeting to be able to come and talk to the students. And he formerly worked at Sandia, so he's got a really interesting. So he was, and he talked about kind of where the industry is going and his personal journey towards where he is now. So the students have just been eating up. It's great for especially now that they're sophomores, and which is prime. So getting them primed for that that fall sort of internship start. But I mean, my goal is really. What I want to do is similar to how ACC is with the companies value the training so much. They're paying salary for students or for employees to go over and train. I would love for us to have your industry partners screen our students, and then we boot camp them, and then we send them to them for an internship. We'll cover the boot camp part, and then you take them for an intern. But this this whole partnership is really, we've started to look at additional pathways, and I talked before about this idea of multiple entry exit points, and so how ACC built, and this is definitely unique. they've built all their continuous education programs to stack into their academic programs. And so that's something that, now we even have, so our new master's program at UT in semiconductor science and engineering that is debuting this fall, we have 2 Bachelor of Applied Technology graduates from ACC that are coming into the program. And so I think, that was something especially exciting when we're talking about K-12, just thinking about, there are multiple paths into this industry.
Right.
And just being able to kind of provide a menu of options. If you want to get started, this is, we get you like in CTE, we get you this sort of training, we get you the job here. If you want to start and go for either the AMP program or an associate's degree, you can come into ACC this way, or you come in for a bachelor's at UT, or you can stay with ACC and then come in to us. Or if you're someone that's wanting to, you're in a different industry and you're wanting to pivot, we can also bring you in through that entry point. So we're just, this is kind of I think we started with an MOU in early 2024, and then that was before, then ACC joined us for the DARPA NGMM program. So we're working on, how we continue to kind of build on what we're doing, but also bring in additional partners like Texas State, how we're thinking about, I'm on a weekly call with University of Texas Dallas and Texas A&M. So we're also, thinking about what are learnings that we can from the Central Texas area that can be shared and vice versa, that we can go back and forth. So,
but really, you've mentioned a lot of different schools, right? This is really, we always talk about this because here, ARMA, we represent Central Texas, and we talk about regional collaboration. We've got other partners. TSTC is in the mix, and Temple College further up, and what they're doing with the Roots program. But this regional collaboration of coming together to understand, first of all, I think where ARMA comes in is trying to bring that manufacturing, the industry voice to the table to say, here's what the need is. So can you design around that and actually educate somebody so that they can come out and actually be on the job? And you've talked about, again, whip smart people coming out with these PhDs, but they don't have the practical aspect, and then the employers have to spend more time. So we're talking a lot about the cross-training piece on this, and that I think is something that's very unique. So again, this is a space that Ty is in right now. Talk a little bit about where you guys are going with that and the vision for that.
Yes. So, I've talked about kind of the pathways and how we're working on kind of, curriculum and other things. But so we are at our Montopolis, the old Semitech site. In addition to the 66,000 square feet of clean room space, that we have one building, we have an office tower that is, for various, office and other functions. But what we're working on right now is to create a joint training center. So with ACC and UT and TI. So, our labs for our new master's program for semiconductor science and engineering will be housed there. The sort of entry level, AMP and CAST and STARS will also be, housed there. So it's that because we also believe that I think our friends at MIT talk about this technologist idea where you need your technicians to have sort of an engineering mindset, and you need your engineers to understand. They need that technical skill set.
Right.
So this was the idea of what, from an education standpoint, like why don't we build this together? And we really see this as being sort of a regional resource. So this is a site where obviously it's for students at ACC and UT, but this is, given that we could cover you from entry level to graduate student, we want this to be a resource for our industry partners as well. And Montopolis is a short drive to the airport, but be able to, for industry partners to be able to leverage the space for their training or for us to create training for them using the space. We see it as a resource for teacher training, particularly for K-12, and that's something that we're working with ACC to support sort of the implementation of these new sort of semiconductor programs and programs of study in Central Texas. So how we can help support curriculum development and teacher training to make sure that students are really getting sort of that applicable experience. But and then also, we can bring them to TIE facilities to actually see, and teachers to actually see that, because we're a little more, even with the DARPA program, I think we're a little more accessible than some of our friends in the region to kind of just come and join. So we really, like I said, we want it to be kind of a regional resource. Think like the types of equipment and other things that we can have in this space is a little bit different than, say, what a K-12 high school might have.
Let's kind of wrap this up, right? We're talking about all this post-secondary training and everything that's going on, but we can't really have that if we don't have the kids in the K through 12 system coming through. So is there anything on the horizon maybe you think will help us recruit more kids into these programs?
I think, we're working to support several different, one, like the implementation of these new regional programs of study and CTE, they're a little bit more of a blend of manufacturing and engineering, which is where we need to be for semiconductor. So we're helping support some of that work. I think we're also, working with TEA and kind of the STEM network to try to help with marketing and some other pieces. But I think, and you mentioned earlier, like one of the best sort of recruiters are parents and families. So, being able to know someone that does this job and also, I think understands that this is new manufacturing. This is not, what people...
The dark, dirty, dangerous days of manufacturing.
Exactly. Yeah. So we're helping support. So we're working with America's Frontier Fund and Austin Community College and Merit America it's basically a technician training fund. So the idea is to bring in local talent who's in a different industry, maybe doesn't have a credential or just wants to come through ACC's programs to pivot into the industry to get that training. And it's sort of a no-fault 0% interest loan. Once someone doubles their salary, they would pay back a nominal rate. If they, it's just to cover the cost of the training. If they don't meet that sort of income threshold, it kicks into a grant. So this is, sort of no fault, and there's no requirement to, stay with the company. It's not indentured servitude. But it's really trying to attract, because we know that, some more of the adults in the area, if we get more of the adults actually trained and brought into the industry, that can also have an effect with students. So it's, the number of superintendents that have told me they want to offer a new manufacturing track, but they're fighting the parents on it. And they're like, it has to be an engineering one. So it's like, it's fighting that mindset of this is not your old manufacturing. I mean, even like agriculture is, the number of drones and robotics and things that it's STEM. Yeah. So there's getting that more of a message, like this is STEM, STEM is in everything now. Engineering is a part of the semiconductor industry, technician, operator up. So,
yeah. Well, and parents, it pays well.
Yes.
It's a good career, and it's not just an entry level, and then that's where you are. We've talked about this opportunity to continue on and off ramp, right? Depending on where they are at in their careers or in their life and things that are going on, they can always get back on the ramp and continue to grow and benefit from that. So, and I love the fact that, in our audience, the world that we're chasing, you can pull other people in different, maybe they're not going anywhere and they're looking for something different, getting out of a service industry job and something that's more meaningful. So we will continue to fight that. We'll continue to brand manufacturing. It is not your grandparents' manufacturing. There's a lot of cool stuff. There'll be opportunities, I think, to go out and actually see what's actually happening. We can talk about semiconductors all day long until you see it. You just won't understand it and what's happening in that. So thank you for tuning in today. Alyssa, thank you for coming in today and talking, a different kind of workforce development and these partnerships that are going on. Can't wait to see the future of TIE and where we go as we continue to build that out. And for those who have tuned in today, thank you so much. And again, thank you to our sponsor, Texas Mutual, for supporting this, and our friends at Mylan Media. Take care.